you're struggling with pronunciation, this video is for you. Who am I? My name is Olga and I'm fluent in 5 languages with extremely different pronunciations: Ukrainian, Russian, English, Turkish, and French. And in this video, I want to share with you all the tips, methods, and advice that helped me over the years improve my own pronunciation. Are you curious yet? Let's dive in. First and foremost, when learning new words, don't just memorize their spelling. Listen carefully to how they're pronounced and get acquainted with pronunciation rules in your target language early on. Many learners skip this part, thinking that they will fix it later, but the truth is that habits form quickly and are notoriously hard to break. And it's much easier to learn something correctly early on than to have to literally rewire your brain after you've been saying it wrong for 6 months. So pay attention to pronunciation from the very beginning. It is important to note that I'm specifically talking about pronunciation here, not accent. You may always have an accent in a foreign language, and that's okay and can sometimes even add charm to your speech. But pronunciation refers to whether you're able to say words in a way that people can understand. Also, don't get me wrong, I'm specifically referring to accents that don't get in the way of clear communication. Because if you have a really strong accent that affects your pronunciation dramatically and makes it super hard for native speakers to understand you, then Houston, we have a problem. Let us look at a few examples of such mispronunciations and how they can change the meaning of what you're trying to say. A lot of English learners struggle with the pronunciation of letters V and W, and on the surface it looks really innocent, but if you pronounce the word very as wary, you're making a rather embarrassing mistake. Same goes for think and sink. In French, many learners pronounce beaucoup de as beaucoup de. And not only is this incorrect pronunciation, but it's also a grammar mistake. Similarly, a lot of them confuse jeune, jaune, and Jean, which look familiar and might blur together if you're not careful, but to a native speaker, they are 3 completely different words. That's why it's worth taking the time to observe and practice these subtle distinctions early on. Trust me, mastering correct pronunciation now will save you from many an awkward misunderstanding later down the line. One of the most effective ways to improve your pronunciation is to imitate native speakers and mimic the sounds as closely as you can. That said, if you feel slightly uncomfortable in your mouth when pronouncing these sounds, don't worry, you are on the right path. Pronunciation in a foreign language is supposed to feel weird at the start, because after all, you're using these muscles that you don't normally use, your mouth is moving in unfamiliar ways, and you're simply trying to produce the sounds that don't exist in your mother tongue. However, if you keep trying, if you keep practicing these difficult, twisty sounds, they'll become less weird over time, and they will almost start feeling like second nature. I remember having to prepare a presentation on sustainable development goals for this one training in Turkey, and at some point realizing that there was no escaping the word sürdürülebilirlik, sustainability. And if you've never tried saying sürdürülebilirlik, imagine tripping over your tongue multiple times and not being able to stop. I'd say I got it right after approximately 50 tries. That said, despite your best efforts, things still can go wrong sometimes. Because I also remember stumbling over the words bilgimi derinleştiren in my valedictorian speech in Turkish, despite having revised it more than a dozen times. But thankfully, I had a friendly audience, so it all worked out. If a certain sound feels impossible, look it up. There are countless videos where native speakers break down how to pronounce tricky letters and combinations. You might even want to Google graphics or pictures of where your lips, tongue, and teeth should be when pronouncing a certain sound. For example, I love using this graphic to explain how to pronounce palatalized Ukrainian consonants. And let's be honest, does it look freaky? Yes. But is it useful? 100% yes. Watching movies and shows in a foreign language can also be a fantastic way to absorb pronunciation. That is, if you pay close attention to how actors pronounce both the words that you already know, just to double check, and the ones that give you trouble. Because hearing the same word pronounced in different contexts by different people will definitely help you solidify how it should sound in the first place. Slow songs are also a great tool, especially if you're musically gifted, because singers would stretch out syllables and sounds, giving your ear more time to pick up on those subtle pronunciation details. You might even want to try singing along. It all helps. And now I would like to talk with you about my absolute favorite method for improving your pronunciation, which is reading books aloud. Now, reading aloud works wonders because it forces you to practice long and difficult words that you do not get a chance to practice in your daily life, all while helping you become more at ease and more comfortable with the language and pronunciation in general. I remember avoiding saying the name of my French friend Christine because every time I tried, it sounded something like Christine, and I was genuinely afraid I might spit on somebody. I also remember one night strolling through the moonlit streets of Paris with another French friend who tried to teach me how to pronounce this name without damaging my vocal cords, until she realized that the patient was simply not responding and gave up. It just seemed for a while that I will never get this right, and that I should probably avoid making friends with more Christines in the future for their own sake. That, however, changed a few months later, when I discovered a book, Rien de grave by Justine Lévy, and read it aloud in one sitting over a weekend. Now, it's worth saying here that it was a beautifully written and engaging novel, which was why I picked it up in the first place, but also that the writer incorporated a lot of rhyme into the sentences, which simply made it a pleasure to read aloud. And would you know it, a 2-day reading marathon later, my mouth and my throat were miraculously unblocked, and I could finally say Christine without having to issue a splash zone warning. So, if there is one thing that I would like you to take away from this video, let's make it two things. One, make sure that you're paying attention to correct pronunciation from the very beginning. And two, read aloud as much as you can, because it is by far the most effective technique to get in the reps and truly feel at ease when pronouncing all these tricky sounds and long words in a very difficult foreign language. And honestly, there's no need to overdo it and, read an entire book in one sitting, unless it's a really good one. But just one chapter at a time, and you'll genuinely be surprised how much it helps. On the topic of literature, poetry is also a surprisingly effective tool to improve your pronunciation. Why? Because if your pronunciation is off, the rhyme or rhythm will break and you will know it instantly. It basically gives you immediate feedback. If you're learning French, Comédie Française has a wonderful YouTube playlist where professional actors read poetry aloud. You can either simply listen to them or even follow along. For English learners, Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven is a great place to start because it's melodic and it feels like you're chanting. And if you're learning any other foreign language and are unsure which poets or poems to go for, you can always ask ChatGPT for recommendations or check out relevant forum pages on Reddit. Who knows, it may even spark your curiosity towards poetry in whichever language you're learning. To sum up, it's not about sounding native or flawless, it's about clarity and also being understood. Because when pronunciation gets in the way of communication, it becomes frustrating, not just for you, but also for the person you're talking to. So take it seriously from the beginning, but equally, don't forget to have fun. Experiment with the different methods, techniques, until you feel truly confident and at ease. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.